Glauco. My name is Geoff O'Keefe. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers, and this is part of our Peacemakers Circle format that we do at least once a week. Sometimes we do a couple of them a week. And if you're not on our mailing list, I highly encourage you to go to zenpeacemakers.org, become a member. It's free. Takes less than a minute. But be sure to sign up in any event, be sure to sign up for the newsletter, and you'll see the future events like this that we do. So we are here today with a wonderful group of friends and teachers to talk about what we titled the intimacy of taking action. In Zen Peacemakers, as I'm sure everyone here knows, our foundation rests on the three tenets. Those three tenets are not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. And many of us with contemplative practices are familiar with and have a good feel for not knowing and bearing witness. But I had the feeling, I had the thought that when it comes to taking action, it's a bit more fraught. I think, maybe I'll speak for myself. The tendency to second guess myself, or to doubt, or to be nervous or concerned about, am I doing the right thing? Is there. That tendency is there. And a number of us here are part of the Zen Peacemaker Order 18-month training program. And we just installed the third cohort. So in the course of a few years, we've had just a little over 100 students go through the program. And I've had so many conversations with students who have those kind of concerns about, how do I know I'm not making things worse? How do I know this is the right action? So rather than trying to answer those questions myself, I wanted to gather some friends who are very experienced in this world, and have us talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'll say their names, and I've got some questions for them. But I want to make sure we leave some time for you too. So if you've got questions, so keep that in mind, and we'll make sure we have time to do that. So I'm very, very happy to have from Helsinki my friend Mikko Ijas, and from Los Angeles Jitsujo Gauthier, and Genjo Marino from Seattle, and Joshin Byrnes from Vermont. All of whom are longtime peacemakers and have been working in this way for years and years and years. So before we step in, I have one more guest who just arrived. So Daiken, once you're here, Daiken Nelson is here from New York City. There you are, Daiken. We're just getting to the point of doing introductions. So with the five of you, if you could each just, say your name, say what it is that you do, and maybe just a word about, taking action recently, but a minute or two, so we can get right into the topic. And Mikko, let's go ahead and start because you're the furthest east.
Thank you so much.
Or west, depending on which way you go.
Which way you go depends on that. My name is Mikko, Sensei Mikko, as they call me now. and I'm from Helsinki, Finland. My last name is Ijas, which is a Russian name. Comes from Elias, so I guess there's a Russian Jewish family at some point in our family. But yeah, I'm from Helsinki, and I run our own organization called Helsinki Zen Peacemakers Finland here in Helsinki. And I'm also a chair of a residence committee of a building where I live. It's a home for almost 100 professional artists here in Helsinki, next to the sea. And we constantly have problems arising, and my job is to kind of alleviate the situations, not to kind of explode. And I constantly invite people to council circles with the whole community to deal with problems that we face. And I think that's like my main practice of taking action at the moment, and kind of seeing that how people respond, and also to kind of see what works and what doesn't. I it's like constantly falling off the wagon and getting back, but yeah, but more, it's enough about me. I throw the
Thank,
baton to the next one.
thank you, Mikko. Jitsujo, tell us just a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jitsujo Gauthier, and I live in Los Angeles. I come from mostly Irish roots, but also a little bit of French Canadian. And I trained at the Zen Center of Los Angeles for about 15 years as a resident, priest, preceptor. And I recently moved out. And so lately, as I'm in my new home, there's a lot of cracks in this concrete along these hills. So there's just these kind of big cracks, and so I have been looking at them. My cat likes to go in the cracks. But I started putting some succulents inside of them and plants inside of them to try to, I don't know, make the cracks look a little bit more beautiful and start to grow things. So I see that as a way of taking action. I also mentor a lot of people and just try to help them find what makes them feel alive. And I see the practice of street retreats as a way of taking action and bearing witness. And also just in the process of gathering kind of groups of people to just start to sit together. Like a few of us have decided to start a West Coast Zen Peacemaker group, and just to see if we can, I don't know, put ourselves in different places and practice the three tenets and, see what happens. So those are some ways that I'm taking action.
Thanks, Jitsujo. Thank you. Genjo, would you like to tell us?
The abbot of a Zen temple here in Seattle, and we have a social action committee that is working mainly to try and help immigrants respond to the difficulties they're facing at this time in this nation. I started Zen 50 years ago. I've come to 9 different Zen Peacemaker bearing witness retreats, plunges over the last 9 or 10 years. And we have council every Saturday here at our temple. And let's see, and we make sandwiches for those who are hungry, and we try and be a resource for neighborhood emergencies should they arise, things like that. I came to Seattle originally as a Vista volunteer and doing community organizing in the central area of Seattle, and was trained by a Jesuit priest by the name of Father Greg Galuzzo, who also trained Barack Obama a few years later. So I have this neighborhood action kind of background and Zen peacemaker background and Zen abbot background.
Thanks, Genjo. Thank you. Joshin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joshin. I'm from Vermont, as you heard, and I have a little place here that I started about 7 or 8 years ago called Bread Loaf Mountain Zen Community, which is named after the local mountain, Bread Loaf Mountain. And we started from the beginning as a pretty socially engaged Zen center. Currently, I'd like to say we're kind of a fully integrated kind of project where we have some buildings at the center of which is our meditation hall, but connected to it, sharing walls and property lines, is Gather, which is a drop-in center that opens the door to anyone who comes under any condition, just to have company and meals, laundry, showers, etc. We have a transitional supported housing apartment complex on our property as well, which provides apartments for people transitioning out of prison and out of homelessness. And then we have currently an encampment in our backyard of people who are living rough at the moment and live on the property, but in tents and use our facilities for their own well-being. And then we have a more formal kind of Dharma community, people who would identify as Zen Buddhist or Zen peacemakers or Buddhist practitioners who come every day for meditation, ritual practices. And now we're beginning to see a lot of kind of interaction among all these different groups where people living rough or living next door or come together are also coming to meditation, and we're sharing music. So we're a pretty integrated project that is kind of unfolding in real time all the time with new and interesting challenges and opportunities to respond in ways that feel right. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joshin. And Jim, can you help unmute Daiken, please? There you go.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for being late. I had a meeting downtown and had to fight my way back. So I'm based in New York, in Manhattan. For about 10 years, I've been running a Pamsula Zen Center, which is kind of a traditional meeting for meditation and study and precepts and various things. We have an affiliate in Youngstown, Ohio. I have a student there who's a Unitarian minister, and we run a group, and I visit them every quarter. And then I have another student in White Plains, which is about 25 miles outside the city, and he also coordinates a group there. And then I'm also the guiding teacher for the Iowa City Zen Center, where I started my practice a very long time ago. And in addition to we do counsel practice, and we do focus on the 3 tenets and do kind of the peacemaker oriented Jukai ceremonies and things like that to kind of integrate the peacemaker work into the traditional Soto Rinzai realm. And another project that I started about the same time is called Mandala Cafe. And we do 3 things at this point. One is a culinary training job development program for folks who have some, as they say in the field, barriers to employment, things that have kind of interrupted their work flow or history. And we give kind of a broad introductory experience for folks to learn skills to be able to work in a kitchen and then we work on placing them. And we also do kind of soft skills of meditation and some movement things and nutrition and ways for folks to kind of cope with both their work world as well as other parts of their life. And then we have a small catering company, which is on-the-job training as well as some part-time employment for folks, and also learning culinary skills and also working on those soft skills. And then we do a weekly community meal in which we're preparing and handing out about 250 meals for folks at this point once a week. And that's volunteer opportunities for folks as well as an extension for folks in our Zen practice.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daiken. Thank you. Thank you. And well, hopefully everyone can relax and enjoy. We'll keep this sort of light and informal and conversational. I have an ulterior motive here, and that is to, in listening to our guests and in discussing some of the topics that we'll bring up, my ulterior motive is to demystify taking action, is to hopefully have all of us come away with a sense of, well, I can do something too. We've heard people talk, Bernie used to talk perhaps about having no money is not a barrier. Never having done it before is not a barrier. There are no barriers. Just go do it. Just go do it. So that's my ulterior motive, is that everybody feels a little more comfortable with this notion of stepping out there to help. Let me, and let's do it this way, the five of you. I won't call on anybody. I'll put a question out there, and if you're moved to say something about it, do so, and if not, don't. We can just, like I said, have this be conversational. Sometimes we refer to taking action as healing, or I might even say holing, WHOLIND, making whole. How do we promote healing when we take action? How are we healing when we take action? Anybody have a thought?
Well, I guess what jumps out for me is part of what I'm healing is my own sense of distance and separation from others. I mean, so the healing action is certainly a response to something that seems wounded and hurt and broken in the world. But it's not just that, because that feels to me like a more transactional approach to doing things. And I think what I'm playing with or trying with is like, what is it to not have that be transactional, but completely relational? And what I'm really working on is healing what is in the way of deep and intimate and ongoing and consistent proximal relationships with people that I have kind of, for whatever reasons, pushed out of my field of vision or out of my sense of where I belong, where I live, who I am, etc. So that's how I think about it. Like, yeah, it is healing. It heals something in me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Joshin. Wonderful. Wonderful. Anyone else have a thought about this?
We'll jump in. Genjo here. When my actions are simple, intimate, ordinary, and kind towards any situation or person, then I know I'm on track. And if it doesn't meet those qualities, then I know I'm off track. And I can feel it when I'm on track or when I'm off track. It's a wonderful koan in which are Zen parables in the Rinzai tradition called This one is the Hekidan Roku. On, let me see, which one is it? Case 95. And I'm just going to put a link to this one. And it's all about having a cup of tea and how that can be intimate, genuine, and kind, even in the most disturbing or difficult situations. It's kind of stop, look, and listen, and maybe have a cup of tea, share a cup of tea with the person or situation that you're ostensibly in conflict or with. And, I don't have any answers. And this comes back to enter the not knowing. And sometimes, indeed, not even having a cup of tea, just keeping silence is going to be best. But anyway, I'm going to drop this.
Thank you, Genjo.
Very good job, Ben.
Thanks, Jitsujo.
So, I'm a chaplaincy, a Buddhist chaplaincy educator, and the word spiritual care comes to mind. Just really caring, spiritually caring. And like a practical example that's not a big deal is I was in Trader Joe's getting my groceries. And, I was on a mission and I was wanting them to be checked out and I was going to bag them. And so I was doing my thing. And all of a sudden the cashier said, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Oh, there's a person. Oh, hi. Oh, hi. Hi. Hello." And, that action from that cashier is like, "How's your day going?" It just like brought this closeness, that I'm not just on task. There's a person here who's bringing me out, and it's a relationship, and we can interact. And so, in the same way, if another example is, I was with two students bearing witness down at Skid Row. We were just standing on the corner and just hanging out. And this older man who had a leg problem was making his way across the street. And one of my students said, "I think he's going to ask us for money." I was like, And the other student was like, "Yeah, well, he looks," and just kind of making an assessment of this man because he was kind of like dragging his leg and he seemed in a lot of pain. And so when he got to the corner, I just said, "Good morning." And then he just lit up and he was just like, "Good morning." And this person who we had decided was a certain something was not, and there was just this closeness. So to me, those like small actions create this spiritual care for self and other that's mutual.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Maybe I jump in now.
Thank you, Mikko.
I feel like we are, or I am at least, like a bunch of headless chickens running around all the time. And sometimes kind of bringing that together feels like healing. And there was a moment this summer when our neighbor drowned on the sea just outside the building. And it was really tragic for all of us. And I was kind of pondering what to do. And as I'm the chair of the residence committee, I send a message to all the tenants. I put a note to the post box that I will hold a small ceremony at the pier tonight, and if someone wants to join, you're all welcome to come. And about 40 people came, and they all participated in the ceremony with bells and everything, and it was really beautiful, even though it wasn't really a Buddhist ceremony. It was kind of adapted or something like that. And after that, we all went to the nearest bar and drank to the early hours of the next day. And it was a lot of fun. But I feel that kind of bringing people together, it's something really important. Our work is kind of like realizing the oneness of life and kind of working with and trusting with the interconnectedness of life. And I always feel that kind of bringing people together and work for something, and even for a small ceremony, it feels like that. Kind of work from the heart and seeing what works. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. Great.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So many of the types of things that we can do when we take action are pretty clear, and they're not controversial. There's not a lot of tension around them. But others there are. Especially when we're looking at conflict on a larger scale, war, let's say, or those kinds of things. I want to ask you about to maybe share and just kind of dig in a little bit to the notion of getting it wrong, of taking an action, and perhaps you're certain that it's the right thing to do, and maybe it turns out not to be. Maybe I want to ask you: do you have an example of when you feel like you might have made things worse? I don't know if that resonates at all. Thank you for being brave.
I do that about 60 times a minute or something. Always say something stupid without thinking. I do that all the time. But yeah, there is a kind of situation that I'm working at the moment. We have these kind of showcases on our northern wall of our building, which were meant for artwork. But I kind of thought that they would be wonderful of kind of displaying some sort of statements like flags and stuff like that. And I asked the foundation that runs our building that would it be okay for me to put up a pride flag for one of the screens. And I told them that it's really meaningful for me and our family, and I think many of the people in our building. And they said, fine, if the residence committee is agreeing with that, maybe it's a good idea. And then all of them agreed, and I ordered the flag, and I got the super to open the screen, and it's over there. And I put up a note to the building that we've done this and this, and the procedures was like this. And then on the residence committee, one of the people asked that maybe we could get a Palestinian flag also. And another one said maybe a Ukrainian flag also. And I thought it was a wonderful idea. And I asked the foundation, and they said that, yeah, but maybe you should ask all the tenants. And all the tenants and lots of people disagreed, and they said that no, it's not a good idea. And I was kind of in between whether it was a good idea or not, even though I feel it's a good idea. And then again, when people started saying that no, it's my building, and I don't like the polarities of representing something like this, and so forth. And now I'm kind of shifting my position, even though I know it's an important thing, but I agree that some people would not like to have that on their wall because it might resolve controversy, and some people might kind of disagree very forcefully outside the building and cause some problems or something like that. So yeah, it's a constant shift of opinion. I feel that.
So in this case, you have not yet taken action.
No. And it wasn't my idea in the first place, even though I agree that it's a good idea. But now, after hearing people's opinions, I'm kind of shifting my opinion. And next week, I call the council for next week for the whole building, about 100 people. So we're going to talk about this, and I'm not going to forcefully put a democratic vote, a maturity votes, and something like that. I'm going to be able to listen to everyone.
Yeah. More sociocratic.
Something like that. Yeah.
Joshin, I see your hand moving.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, of course we have to be skillful about what we're doing, but I find that if I get stuck in really rigid notions of something's gone right or something's gone wrong, that I'm in knowing, and our practice is not knowing. And so that's often an indicator for me that I've stepped out of not knowing practice, actually. So here at the encampment this week, for example, someone new moved in, and very complex psychology, and a lot of things fell apart in the encampment, which then triggered all kinds of other issues. The town zoning commission called me, neighbors called, the dentist office next door came over, people in the encampment came in and said, oh, things are falling apart. And, a view on that could be, oh, well, we're doing something wrong. Really? I mean, what if I just not indulge that way of thinking and think instead, what's happening here? And how do I respond now? And how do we respond? So what we did was we called a council together. I don't know that there's really been a council of people living rough and the dentist and the next door neighbor, but we pulled it together and said, well, let's talk about what's happening. What do we see? And it was hard and it was difficult. And, there's something in motion now. I don't know how it'll play out completely, but some people in the encampment are saying maybe the right thing, given all the different dynamics here, is to take down the encampment and for us to move somewhere else or to live separately for a while. That kind of insight came out of the group who lived inside. And so right and wrong, we don't really know what's going on. What matters is that we're in each other's lives. And we're in each other's lives in a kind of intimate way where we're building relationships and trust and the ability to navigate complex terrain and territory together as human beings, as people trying to find safety in the world, as people trying to live into some set of aspiration for what it means to be a whole and good person. And that's hard to figure out, filled with all kinds of rights and wrongs. But in the end, I think what we try to stay true to is staying in relationship with one another throughout it. And then right and wrong doesn't have such a powerful impact somehow on our thinking.
Yeah, Joshin, I like that part. And you started with that also. Part of the question that I made in my notes was, is there such a thing as it being wrong? And I think you've given voice to that question. Perhaps there isn't. Perhaps.
Wrong is right too sometimes. You know what I mean? You have to enter into the unknown, and and that always seems to be a right step, even if you step into some big doo-doo, or you step into a mess, or your step creates a bit of a mess. Even that becomes a field of practice. It's a Buddha field right there.
Yeah. Anyone else have a thought about this? About getting it wrong, or what is there a wrong, or any time that you might have made things worse? Daiken, go ahead. Jim, can you? Oh, there you go. Good.
So there's a quote that I'm fond of from a Theravadan monk. Right now, it's like this. And so wherever we find ourselves, it's just this as it is. and it can't be any different. And so these ideas of right and wrong become somewhat fluid and don't have the gravity that they do kind of in our general world and understanding. And when I went to college, back in the time where we were reading kind of venerable white people, men mostly, there was this book, Henderson the Rain King. And this person had this kind of crisis in their life, and they wound up in Africa and were within a village, and the village water supply was overrun by frogs. And so this person, kind of knew what to do, what the right thing to do was, and they rigged this little explosion to like kill the frogs, and it wound up blowing up the water supply and making it impossible for the village to support itself. And, he had a right idea of how to deal with the frogs, and then the outcome was something different. And so I've always that stuck with me, that, we have intention and attention, and we do our best in a given moment. And as soon as we start to make those distinctions between right and wrong and good and bad, we're going to move things in such a way that may not be as open or as available as just being in this not knowing. And I remember one thing that Byrnes said once upon a time was that somebody was asking him about one of the projects that we were working on, and Byrnes said, we do something and we create something gets put into place, and then later on somebody comes along and makes it better. And so that it will change, and folks with different eyes and different experiences will come and influence it somehow, and it will always kind of move towards being, the next best thing, whatever that is in this moment. And so every moment is this opportunity to just do our best and to not be so worried about whether or not it's the right thing to do, or and also, understand it will change and become something else later in the day or tomorrow.
Thank you, Daiken. Much appreciated. That's one of the messages I really want our group today to hear is the encouragement not to be paralyzed with all this doubt about, am I going to do it perfectly? Go ahead, make a mistake. Make another mistake. Anyone else have thoughts about this topic of making things worse or getting it wrong, or is there a wrong in that?
Just to maybe continue from the previous thought, that not to shy out and just to do it if it feels right at the moment, even though there might be consequences, and not to kind of be afraid of that, because sometimes we get paralyzed when we start to think that if it's a right or wrong situation and so forth, and just to be brave enough to do something.
Very nice. Thank you, Mikko.
Here in the States, if what was right for people to vote for Trump and what was right for people to not vote for Trump, if I can't see what was right on both sides, I haven't looked at the picture very deeply. How did voting for Trump serve the people who were voting for him in a way that said, we're not being met, we're not being seen, we want to be seen? If I can't understand that, then I get into a place where they're right and or I'm right and they're wrong, And it's maddening because I certainly have my opinion. And it's very different from other people's opinion. And as Bernie would say, yes, that's my opinion. Can we talk about where you're getting your opinion and where I'm getting my opinion so that we're not stuck in this right and wrong thinking and that we can actually hear and see each other?
Thank you. Thank you, Genjo. Let's shift a little bit. When we talk about taking action, we allow for the option or the possibility of doing nothing. How do we know that when we choose to do nothing, we're not just avoiding the risk of stepping forward? Maybe we've already touched this, I don't know, but if that resonates with anybody.
I know when things are so polarized on certain issues that I feel incapacitated. I don't know how to respond. But then I'm in the not knowing. And maybe it's better just not to respond until something becomes clear.
I also think, sometimes it's easier to bow to all the different aspects of the local community than it is to bow to all of the different aspects of me. And part of what I learned a little bit by going through this is I have to honor my paralysis. I have to honor my fear. I have to honor my doubt. I have to honor my altruism. I have to honor my bold next step. What feels like a bold next step to me is, what is it to bear witness and to honor every part of myself here as well, as a way of liberating myself from getting stuck in any one of those spaces. Because certainly there are times when I'm like, I'm terrified here, or I am really out of my depth, or I'm working outside of my usual resources here. Does that mean I shouldn't step forward? And sometimes it is. I just have to honor that part of myself. I'm afraid, or I'm doubtful. Recognizing as well that this too is going to change. But to not dishonor that part, to not pathologize that part of me, because I believe wisdom is hidden in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so take the time to let the wisdom, reveal itself. That.
So, Joshin, in some circumstances, indeed, you would not act. Perhaps.
There are many circumstances you don't act.
Yeah.
Sometimes for good reason, because I think non-action is the best action. And sometimes because I'm experiencing a little bit of confusion or paralysis. And I think, well, that's what's here right now,
Yeah. Maybe to poke this topic in just a slightly different direction. I made a note the other day for a talk I want to give. And the note was, discomfort is a Dharma gate. And I don't know if that relates here or not, but I can see myself being faced with the option of taking an action and being uncomfortable about it, and perhaps choosing not to act because of the discomfort rather than something else. And maybe this is just wrapping around the axle here a little bit too much, but I don't know if anyone else has any other thought about that.
You'd say something. Well, I guess what I hear you asking, like in that last question, is for me the difference in like this paralysis, like when Joshin's talking about the paralysis or fear, like the story that came up is a couple of times I took a group of people to hand out food and blankets in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And one time we went downtown, and anyways, 3 different times basically. And each time we ended up bearing witness to someone ODing and like almost dying. And then they didn't, but and watching people try to revive them with Narcan. And there's a paralysis, where I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it's a serious situation. And then I second guess myself. I'm like, is this a good idea to have people come and bear witness? But that's that's really what's happening right outside our doors. And so there is this sort of fear, questioning, paralysis, which to me seems healthy thing to go through and then to talk about as a group. What does everyone think about what happened or what we just bared witness to? And then there's also this thing of like, am I guiding a group of people to gawk at this real life thing that's happening? Well, anyways, to me, there's sort of a healthiness about that. And maybe on another side, I think, I really hear everyone saying there's not 2 sides. And so if I'm thinking there's 2 sides or only 2 sides, then I'm stuck. And so how do I open up and see there's many sides? And to me, that's getting unstuck. But what I was going to say, another side is, sometimes I'm in this kind of inertia in my apartment, and there's a comfort, or even there's an inertia when I lived at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, like enclosed inside these gates. And really all I need to do is just step outside my apartment, honestly, just walk around the block and things start to open up, step outside the temple gates. And that is getting out of my comfort zone, like just getting out of that inertia feeling. And once I step out and start moving, the next indicated step seems to reveal itself, and it's not complicated, and things start to flow on.
Thanks, Jitsujo. Yeah. And I know your neighborhood. I know what you're talking about. When I lived there 40 years ago, I was walking down the street outside the Zen Center, and some guys came by in a lowrider and pointed a gun at me. It was a very intimate form of connection.
Sean.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was growing up, there was a church on our way home, and they would put up some sort of like pithy saying each week. And I remember one of them was that has stuck with me all these years is not to decide is to decide. So not making a choice or not engaging in an action is, on some level, is our choice or is our action. And I think it's important to take responsibility for that and not blame oneself for the inactivity or whatever feelings might be behind it, but just to say, oh, okay, so in this moment, I'm choosing to not act or to not speak or to not, do something, and just to, participate in that as fully as we can and realize that it's okay wherever we find ourselves, and that it's okay to not act or to not respond, and to wait and to be have patience and kind of forbearance to see if there might be something that unfolds a little further down the line, which will influence or flavor whatever this moment is. And then also inviting others into that process for different perspectives. And like Joshin was saying, to have a council with all of the people involved in this, not just the Zen Center and the campers, but to invite the neighbors and other folks to bring more energy and more different perspectives and different hearts and minds into whatever the situation might.
Thanks, Daiken. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Of course, Mikko.
I'm frustrated about whether I'm doing enough, because I realize that I'm in a good position of doing things. I hold free meditations for people who need that, and in a local deaconess center, and once a week, and I work with the climate activists, and I'm working on establishing a apartheid-free zone for our community, and so forth, and I'm doing lots of voluntary work, even though I don't really have time for it. But even though I try to fill my time that way, and I have a teenage son and a wife, and life is very busy. I rarely have any time left on my day. But even though I'm constantly kind of frustrated that whether I should just take a car and drive to Ukraine and get some bullet vests for people like our Polish peacemakers do, whether I should do that. And I have friends who've taken a bus to Ukraine and get some people out from there, and take a boat to Gaza like Greta Thunberg is doing again. And there's so many things that I could do, and I feel it, the calling, but it's frustrating, and it's a constant pain, I think. But still, I cook the meals for my son and see that he goes to bed on time, and I feel that there is this kind of closer, intimate relationship and importance that I'm here, and I feel that there is a duty to be done, but still there is this nagging sense that I could do more. And am I doing enough? Yeah.
I'm glad you raised that. Let's stay on that topic a little bit more. If anyone else has any thoughts about, that notion of, and again, I think it's a voice in our head, but talk about how that feels to, kind of question, am I doing enough? And yeah, if that strikes a chord with any of you, because I think we could run ourselves into the ground, couldn't we? Go ahead, Joshin. I'm sorry.
Can I be mean for a minute?
Be mean.
There are times when I think we think of ourselves as quite fragile. And we certainly have fragility, and we're vulnerable. And some of us are prone to burnout and overdoing it, I also think we practice with a lot of rigor and vigor and energy. And we bring ourselves and stand right at the edge. And sometimes if we have the nagging feeling, am I doing enough? We have to look, what is the suffering side of that question, and what is the flourishing side of that question? Is this part of my compulsion that leads me to this question? Or is it my aspiration that leads me to this question? Is it my fear and sense of fragility? Or is it my love for the world that led me to that question? And maybe even setting those up as either or isn't exactly right. But I don't think we should let ourselves off too easily from the question. I believe we are incredibly well resourced. I believe many of our organizations are not operating fully to capacity. I think more can be done. And I think in order to do more, we have to purify our intention and understand why we should do more. So, I have to check that a lot. There's a lot of conversation inside me and with others about that balance. But I don't think we should run too quickly to the place of we need to protect ourselves. I think that's a little bit of a cop-out sometimes. That's just my opinion, man.
Maybe you stirred the pot a little bit. Anyone have a comment about that? About the thousand eyes and thousand hands?
I think it was Mikko who said, I have a teenage son and a wife. That takes some time. But I have a spouse who is in her 70s and is disabled pretty seriously after an accident 4 years ago. And that takes a lot of my time. And I'm not participating as much out in the community as I once did because in the last 4 years, that's taken a lot of time. There's only so many hours in the day, right? And I have to prioritize. My spouse needs this care and attention. And then I have a Zen group and I have a psychotherapy practice. And yes, I donate more money than I used to organizations that I know, in my opinion, are doing a front line, doing good. But because I can't be on the front line as much as I used to. And that's okay. I feel confident that I'm doing enough because there are priorities and only so many hours in a day.
Thanks, Genjo. Anyone else have a thought about this? If not, we can move on.
I have a thought. In the Pamsula group, there's been a lot of kind of inquiry about what can we do in this moment in which we find ourselves with the political and social and human, all of these things going on, and different things all over the world. And the question, the legitimate question is, what can I do? And in conversation with folks, we've kind of come to this place of it's not so much a what, but how. And if we are guided by not knowing, and this, the previous discussion about moving beyond right and wrong and connecting with our intention as well as operating from a place of connection with everything and loving kindness and compassion, that, taking care of a spouse is what needs to be done right now, or taking care of a child, or taking care of oneself. And so it's, again, kind of reconnecting with that intention of in being of service, being a bodhisattva for everyone and everything. And as Joshin said, kind of being aware of our dynamic within that, of feeling overwhelmed or feeling, powerless to, do any like real impact. And it's not necessarily about that, taking a step back from that and just kind of, right, I need to wash the dishes or whatever it may be that needs to be done. Again, the next best thing is this moment and throwing oneself fully into.
You know, in the Gate of Sweet Nectar, the line that jumps out to me all the time is, with all our spirit, with all our love, with all our might. You know, we vow to accomplish the way, to invite suffering and misery no longer. That is the vow. And that's a how. That's, you know, to your point, Daiken, I think. That's not like how many hours are you spending working. It is how are you approaching your life and your resources and all the ingredients of your life, you know, with all your spirit, with all your love, with all your might, inviting suffering and misery no longer. And, you know, I think that that's where, I don't know, we encourage each other in that way. Whether that is, you know, I've been down the road too, raising 3 kids and 10 grandkids and full-time jobs and Zen centers and, you know, those things. I totally get it. And then there's this kind of question, where does the vow take us? What is the, you know, when we place that center in our lives, then how does that touch onto everything that we do? And that just is a different question than, oh, I'm afraid of burning out.
Okay.
Because I think that fear of burning out, we're a little hypersensitive to. Remember once one of my teachers, Joan Halifax Roshi, who's known to be clear and direct. And one day we were in the room with her and we were saying, oh, Roshi, we're exhausted. We're so tired, you know. She said quite bluntly, that's because you're not practicing correctly. And, you know, yeah, we were all offended at that, of course. Like, Jesus, hard I'm working. And of course, we had that reaction. And there was something true in what she said. You know, that part of the exhaustion was the unwillingness to give myself fully to what I'm doing. And I appreciated that, you know.
That's wonderful.
And piggybacking with your piggyback, I think it's about freedom.
Mhm.
It's to be liberated from any idea or any kind of self-reflection of, I want to do it right, or I'm not doing it right, or I'm exhausted. It's like, just be free with that. Practice and play freely with whatever is unfolding in this moment. And if that's feeling exhausted, then participate, respond to that, rather than going forward with these ideas and shoulds or.
Thank you both. Wonderful. When we started, I promised that we'd leave some time for others to ask questions. So maybe I'll ask my friend Jim to help me here. If anybody has a question, there are way too many of you for us necessarily to see your hand if you wave it. So down under React, you can put up an electronic hand and make a comment or ask a question. We have this wonderful opportunity to have these teachers here with us today. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have something. I've noticed quite a few chat texts going by. I'll confess up front, I can't read those and pay attention to what people are saying. So if you've chatted something that you'd like to share, feel free. We've got a little time here, so. This is a rare time when nobody has anything to say. Does not happen very often.
Hey, my name is Ashrin, and member of the Zen Center in Boulder, Colorado. And, how to phrase my question, so pardon me if I'm a little rant. And speaking a lot today about global action, about social action, and my question in a broad sense.
Oh,
To the realm of, can you hear me okay?
Ashton, your connection is a little choppy, so we're missing half your words.
Okay, hold on. Is that better?
Let's give it a try and see. Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah, hopefully it's just the headphones being
Oh,
finicky.
good.
And yes,
so-
Jeff, if you mute, sometimes that helps because it can be a feedback thing.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, cool. So I'll try to paraphrase and be brief. So we've been talking a lot today about social action and global action. And my question is about how to narrow the conversation to the realm of personal action, like taking action in one's life in like a more personal and intimate and individual sort of way. And the reason I'm asking is because I'm facing a time in my own life right now where there's a lot of personal action to take. And I struggle often to know and discover what the next right thing is. And I find myself facing a lot of fear about taking the time to introspect and feel my feelings and taking the time to understand what the next right thing is. I fear that if I stop to make space, that something will pass me by, that the right action will be missed, these kinds of things. I wonder if you might speak to that sort of realm.
I could speak to that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like how you phrase that as taking personal action, taking action through, what I do is I think of my skandhas, bearing witness to what's happening in my skandhas and allowing feelings of floundering, lost, doubt, uncertainty. I mean, that's that real place of not knowing. It's ground zero, and just spending time with that. And again, if I, at any point I could move into busyness, just like busy doing little things. But how much time do I really spend in that kind of empty? It's not really empty, that place where there's some discomfort and like floundering is like a feeling that I don't particularly love to hang out in, but to really get to know. And to me, that seems really important part of the not knowing practice. And the other thing that I've been working on is like, what am I being called to do? And what's keeping me up at night? Like before I go to bed, what am I thinking about? Like what's turning over in my head? Like what do I, that sort of feeling. And I noticed that I judge that. Like I think those sorts of things, so lately what's been keeping me up at night is just this yard that's not really a yard, this place that I have that's just dead, this yard outside that's dead. And I just want to bring it back to life, but not too quickly. And I've been tilling soil and going to get free mulch and planting things in the cracks and not overdoing it just because there's a lot, but just that's what's keeping me up at night. And sure, I could judge it and say like, well, I should go volunteer at the soup kitchen or I should make some people sandwiches. But to me, there's intimacy in what I am doing. At the end of the day, I come inside and my clothes are covered with dirt. I've got scratches on my knees because I've just thrown myself into this place. And to me, that's the intimacy of taking action in my own life, you know?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jitsujo.
I could go.
Yeah, go ahead, Mikko.
I I have a problem with my father, which is the kind of theme that's been going through my whole life. I was 4 years old when we moved away from Africa. I spent my early days in Nigeria, and my father stayed there, and he's been involved with international arms smuggling and all kinds of legal stuff, and now he's retired and he's kind of sick and doesn't do so well and lives in central Finland like my mother does, even though they're divorced a long time ago, and my father has been married many times after that. But I do stay in contact with him, but I feel that much of my kind of personal issues is kind of tied to it. And I spent quite a bit of time in therapy when I was younger, and I tried to kind of establish more kind of adult relationship with him when I was in my 20s. It didn't work out. But when my son was born, I kind of felt that there's no need for my own personal relationship with my father, because I'm a father to someone else, and I've kind of tried to nurture that relationship as to the best of my extent, and I feel that's been kind of really nourishing. But I feel that there is kind of a constant kind of sense of this kind of nagging sense that there's something kind of off. But I also feel that I'm the only person in the history of the world who can deal with this problem, and no one else can own this. And I know that there's moments in my life when I say or do something really stupid for my son or my wife, or to my wife, that I regret, but then I kind of step forward and say that I'm sorry and so forth. But yeah. And I also know that I could eat more healthily, and I could go to run or do something kind of positive to maintain my life in a better way. But yeah, but oftentimes I feel that I'm too busy to do that. But yeah, but taking action for your own health and for your own well-being it's not easy, and it's often neglected.
Thank you, Mikko. Thank you. Ashton, I hope that helps a little bit. We've got a few people with hands up, and I want to try to, if we can keep our comments brief, we can maybe get through all three. Sharon, you might have been first in the line.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so very much to all the presenters. I don't know how it happens, but this has certainly been one of the cases where every time one of you spoke or the question was posed, it's the issue and one of the issues that I've been dealing with in my life. And so thank you very much for your insights and your sharing and the intimacy of your sharing. I appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you for your comment, Sharon. Thank you.
It's lovely.
Rachel, I think you were next in the queue.
I'd love a little more riffing from our presenters on, somebody said, purify intention, exploration of motivation that leads us to action. And then the phrase compulsion to action. So if those echoes land again, I'd love to hear some more riffing.
Somebody want to riff? Genjo?
We talk about the Bodhisattva vow, first vow, in this way: to care for all beings, great and small, animate and inanimate. That's just something I try to keep in front of me. Am I caring for myself? Am I caring for my spouse? Am I caring for my community? Am I caring for my neighbor? And Am I caring for the nation? Am I caring for the world? Are my actions caring? And of course, I fall short or I have regrets, but that's constantly in my mind. Is this next action caring?
Anybody else want to?
I think there's no escaping our conditioning and our, all these things that get mixed up into this idea of a self that then we're acting out of and doing things. So I think, sometimes we run too quickly by the first part of that famous Dogen quote, to study the way is to study the self, and to study the self is to forget the self, et cetera, et cetera. But we do have to study the self. We have to really come to understand how our biologies, our psychologies, our conditioning, our sociology, our intellectual understanding, what we've been exposed to in life, is shaping what we're choosing to do and how we're choosing to do it, and what we're choosing to see, what we're choosing to not see. And that's a constant life of reflection. That's a beautiful part of our practice, actually. To not let it tip into self-absorption, but to get really curious about, why am I doing what I'm doing? And how do I engage in a process, a lifelong process of always liberating a little bit more of that, and liberating a little bit more, and liberating a little bit more. Seeing what's going on here and what's driving me. And am I taking steps in the direction of kind of less self-absorption, or redefining of who I think I am, that is more aligned with this understanding we have is what we are is intimacy with things. That's what we are. And we take steps. And so we look all the time at what gets in the way of that. Where am I connected? Where am I separated here? And then to understand a little bit about what separates me. Why do I feel separated from this? And that's part of the beauty of our practice, I think. Not a place of shame and blame and guilt, but a place of wonder and opportunity for us. So that's how I kind of riff on that.
Thank you, Joshin.
Just really quickly, thanks for that question. So this compulsion to action, that sort of brings up a story of last week when I was in class teaching a hybrid class. I'm kind of annoyed about teaching this hybrid class because it's half people in person and half people on Zoom. The Zoom people are all over the country. But in any case, when I go into the class, one of the students who lives in Los Angeles came on Zoom, and I had this compulsion to just be mad about it, basically. And so I was just like, why are you on Zoom? Like, I don't understand. Like, and I was just really upset, and I made that known. And then he wrote in the chat, and this is a monastic, like a monastic student. So I'm yelling at this monastic student. He's like, I'm sorry, professor, I'm not feeling well. And then I'm like, oh, I feel terrible that I like jumped to this conclusion. And then it ends up that and then I'm like, well, I apologize. And then I tried to use it as a lesson for the class, because there was this story about the man who's yelling at the river, telling the river to stop flowing because he's done drinking it. So it's fine. So then the next chapter is that I'm feeling bad, and then the student comes to me, said, okay, well, so the truth is that I was there this morning, and then I went back to the temple, and I wasn't really feeling well, but I saw it was on hybrid, and he's like, and I'm sorry. And I was like, I'm sorry. And we were both sorry. And so to me, that was a getting to know of me and him, and It is a little embarrassing because it's in front of everyone, but that's it. That's who I really am and who he really is, So
Thank you for sharing that. That's really sweet. That's sweet. Diana, I think we have enough time, so we'll make it here. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, first of all, I love it. I love it very much. All this exploration about taking action. And I'm Diana from Amsterdam, Holland, Zen Peacemakers, Holland. And my question is to you all about the retreats, about the bearing witness retreats. Because going on street retreat, I was in Ireland this year, but we had a very nice and very good retreat on the women who had their children had to have their young children left because they were unmarried, and the whole history, and it was much study, and it was a bit personal with people, and there was a lot of connection. And also in the street retreats, I really feel this connection to the people and to the group, and it gives more insight. But then we go home, and then I feel a bit, sometimes I feel a bit frustrated about these beautiful retreats, because then I think it's not about my feeling, it's not about my not my experience, not broadening my, just this step to do something. How do you think about that in connection to the different bearer witness retreats that Zen Peacemakers organize?
Thank you for that, Diana. Very nice. And welcome from the Netherlands. We've got just a few more minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and play my moderator card and finish with one last question for our group. And I think one of you referred to this earlier, but I'm going to go back to it. Genjo just made a lovely offering to Zen Peacemakers and took us through, I think we had 8 class sessions of the 10 Zen ox pictures, the ox herding pictures. And he a number of times he made the point that these are not necessarily linear or sequential. And I think our 3 tenets are the same way. It's not a matter of, well, I've mastered not knowing, so now I get to move on to bearing witness. That's like a 200 level course. And then I move on to taking action. It's like a 300 level course. It's not that way. They move in all kinds of directions, it seems to me. And that's going to be the question for the 5 of you. How does taking action loop back to and connect with not knowing and bearing witness? Can any of you want to speak to that? Mikko, please.
Yeah, this is my favorite example. When I was doing my doctorates, I needed to do some field study with the Kalahari San people, the hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari in Namibia. And I kind of feel beforehand that it was like taking action, that I really needed to go there. I felt that there's a need, and the time is running out, the culture is vanishing, and I need to go there. So I took all the books that I could find, and I studied the Kalahari San people, and I really felt that I was an expert on that, and flew to Namibia and been there many times before, and went to the San people and started asking questions to kind of fulfill my gaps in my knowledge and so forth, just to realize that I didn't know anything about their culture. And I was planning to spend a week over there, and the first day I realized that I'm just complete ignoramus, and I don't really know anything about them and so forth, and to kind of just like to try to fulfill the gaps of my knowledge wasn't really going to be enough. And the first day, woke up the second day, and I realized that I just need to shut my mouth and just to follow and just listen and pay attention and so forth. And I feel that it started from the taking action, but it really plunged me into not knowing. And the whole week was about bearing witness and try to learn. And my conception of their culture and the people and their religion and practices and everything kind of formed from that. Maybe some of the material was right that I studied before, but my conception of their culture and traditions and the people themselves, it changed completely during the week.
Wonderful example. I like that quite a lot. Anyone else have a thought about this? Genjo, looks like you've unmuted. Yeah.
Well, back to Diana's question for a moment. What I really value about the Zen Peacemaker plunges that I've done in Rwanda and Auschwitz and the South and in the Dakotas is to not close my eyes to the deep, dark suffering that we as humans have caused ourselves. And to be able to, this idea of enlightenment is not all fun and games. We have to be able to go from ecstasy to the greatest suffering. It's like a gigantic rainbow, and the greatest suffering side of that rainbow has really been spoken to by the Zen Peacemaker plunges that I participated in. And this, then the bearing action, what actions do I take coming out of these retreats? They're small steps. And if I get some feedback that my loving action is causing more harm than good, or there's like a roadblock or a dead end, well, then I go back to no knowing. So it's all right and important to experiment with what loving action is going to be, what is caring or loving action, and then give it a try. And if it doesn't work out or it seems like it's a dead end, go back to no knowing and bearing witness again until another something bubbles up for experimentation. It's still not.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Genjo. We're coming up against our time, but if anyone else has a pressing comment that's short, we can take it.
Genjo mentioned that it's like a rainbow, but sometimes on the retreats that we have and the opinions that we get and the emotions that we go through, it's more like a blender or a juicer instead of a rainbow.
Yeah, and I just would add that the bearing witness retreats I just see as a training. They're training, an intensive training to learn how to more deeply practice the 3 tenets.
Great. Thank you, Jitsujo. Okay, we are at the bottom of the hour, and it's later in the evening in Finland, so I think it's bedtime for Mikko. There were a number. I just looked at the chat. There's a number of questions in there, and naturally, I can't answer all those here live. But I did put my email address in the chat. So if you've got a question you want to ask about Zen Peacemakers or programs or anything like that, I think I saw 1 or 2 like that. Feel free to email me. I'd be happy to hear from you. And with that, my sincere thanks, Daiken, Mikko, Jitsujo, Genjo, and Joshin. Thank you for your time. I know I have a sense of how busy you all are. So I really appreciate it. This means a lot to Zen Peacemaker community. It means a lot to the 78 people that were here today. So this helps us spread this unique message that we have, this unique approach to addressing suffering in the world that is Zen Peacemakers. So, and thank you everybody who stayed with us. And we'll say, and Joshin's got his email address in there as well, if you'd like to contact him. So thank you everybody. Come see us again. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
So much for joining. And thanks, Geoff, for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.